I never thought I would see my parents again. After 16 years of building a life they knew nothing about, I believed I was finally free of their shadow. But freedom is fragile when your past knows your address. I still remember the sound of their fists on my door, how my heart stopped when I looked through the peephole. Their faces were older, but their eyes held the same cruelty I had escaped at 18. I had no idea that afternoon would end with blood on my floors and sirens in my ears. Before I share how my world collapsed that Tuesday afternoon, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to hear what happens when your past refuses to stay buried. Growing up in Pine Creek, Iowa, was like living in two different worlds. To outsiders, we were the perfect American family. My father, Richard, worked as a bank manager. My mother, Harriet, taught third grade at the local elementary school, and I, Phoebe, was their only child. Our Victorian house, with its white picket fence and manicured lawn, was featured twice in the local newspaper for holiday decorations. Everyone in town thought we were blessed. Behind closed doors, our home was a battlefield where I learned to navigate landmines of rage and manipulation before I could tie my shoes. My father was what neighbors called a functioning alcoholic. He maintained his respected position at the bank, but at night he transformed into someone unrecognizable. The liquor cabinet was never empty, and his temper was as volatile as summer lightning. I grew up learning to read the signs. The loosening of his tie meant irritation. The second glass of whiskey signaled danger, and the sound of his belt being removed from its loops meant I needed to find somewhere to hide. My mother was different, but equally dangerous. She never laid a hand on me, but her words cut deeper than any physical wound. She was the queen of gaslighting before I even knew the term. "You are too sensitive," she would say, after my father had thrown a plate against the wall. "No one will ever believe you," she would whisper when I threatened to tell a teacher about the bruises. "You deserve everything that happens to you," she insisted when I cried. Perhaps worst of all was her constant refrain. Family business stays in the family. School became my sanctuary. I poured myself into books and assignments, staying late for any club or activity that would keep me out of the house. By 14, I had mapped out my escape plan. I took every odd job I could find, babysitting for neighbors, shelving books at the library, helping elderly Mrs. Simmons with her gardening. Every dollar went into a coffee can buried in the backyard beneath the old oak tree. My parents never noticed the dirt under my fingernails or questioned why I spent so much time outdoors. When I turned 16, I secretly got my GED, instead of attending regular high school, telling my parents I was participating in a special academic program. They did not care enough to verify. By 18, I had saved nearly $4,000 and received acceptance letters from 3 state colleges far from Iowa. I chose the one that offered the best financial aid package in Arizona. The night before I left, my father discovered my acceptance letter while searching through my room, one of his regular violations of my privacy. His rage was apocalyptic. He tore up the letter, smashed my few possessions, and threatened to break both my legs to keep me home. My mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, telling me, "This is what happens when you try to abandon your family." I left before dawn the next morning with nothing but a backpack containing my vital documents, the money from my coffee can, and a change of clothes. I took a bus to Des Moines, then another to Chicago, then finally to Phoenix. Along the way, I legally changed my last name from Harrington to Davis, got a new phone number, and deleted all social media accounts. I became a ghost to everyone from my past. Those first years were brutal. I spent weeks in homeless shelters while attending community college part-time and working 2 jobs. I lived off ramen noodles and free condiment packets. Winter nights in unheated apartments taught me to sleep in layers of clothing. But even on the hardest days, waking up without fear of my father's footsteps was worth every sacrifice. The turning point came during my second year at community college. Professor Jacobs, my literature teacher, noticed my essays about resilience and asked me to stay after class one day. She saw something in me I could not yet see in myself, potential. With her guidance, I applied for scholarships reserved for survivors of domestic violence. One of them covered full tuition for a bachelor's degree in design at Arizona State University. Professor Jacobs also introduced me to therapy. Those early sessions were excruciating, unpacking years of trauma I had carefully boxed away. My therapist, Dr. Linden, helped me understand that what happened was never my fault, that children do not cause adults to become monsters. She taught me about hypervigilance, trauma bonding, and how to recognize the signs of healthy relationships. Most importantly, she helped me see that my story was not over, that I could write new chapters without my parents as characters. While in college, I found my first true friends. Tina, from my design class, whose parents had also been abusive, understood my jumpiness at loud noises without explanation. James, from the coffee shop where I worked part-time, made me laugh for the first time in years with his terrible jokes. And Miguel, from my therapy group, showed me what genuine male kindness looked like. Slowly, I built a chosen family who taught me that love should not hurt. These people became my safety net, but I never fully let my guard down. I still checked my surroundings constantly, never posted pictures online, and kept my address private. The fear that my parents would somehow find me never completely disappeared. As it turned out, that fear was justified. 16 years passed. I transformed from that terrified 18-year-old runaway into Phoebe Davis, age 34, respected interior designer with my own small but successful business. My portfolio featured upscale homes and boutique hotels across Arizona. Clients valued my eye for creating spaces that felt both beautiful and safe, though they never knew why security was so important in my designs. My apartment became the embodiment of everything I had been denied as a child: peace, beauty, and safety. Located on the 4th floor of a secure building in Scottsdale, it featured wide windows that flooded the rooms with desert sunlight, custom bookshelves filled with volumes I could read without hiding, and soft textiles in calming blues and greens. The kitchen where I cooked elaborate meals for friends had no alcohol cabinet. The living room featured comfortable seating arranged for conversation, not centered around a television set that would constantly blare sports and news like in my childhood home. My bedroom door had 3 locks, though I rarely used them anymore. Every piece of furniture, every artwork, every throw pillow represented a victory. I had paid for this apartment myself, designed every inch of it, and created a sanctuary that reflected the woman I had become rather than the child I had been. On difficult days when memories surfaced, I would walk through each room touching these symbols of my new life, grounding myself in the present. My social circle remained small but meaningful. Tina had moved to California but visited twice yearly. James had married and had 2 children who called me Aunt Phoebe. Miguel had become a counselor himself, and we met monthly for coffee to check in on each other. And then there was Sam, the architectural photographer I had met 3 years ago while working on a project. Our relationship progressed slowly as I needed time to trust, but his patience never wavered. He understood my boundaries, respected my need for personal space, and never pressured me to discuss my past before I was ready. When I finally told him everything, he held me without interruption or judgment. 6 months ago, he had given me a key to his house, which I kept on my keychain, but rarely used, still more comfortable in my own space. Despite my outward success, invisible scars remained. Certain sounds still triggered panic attacks: ice cubes clinking in a glass, a belt being removed, a door slamming too hard. Nightmares occasionally disrupted my sleep, leaving me exhausted the next day. I maintained a routine of therapy sessions twice monthly with Dr. Precy, of. Linden, now more for maintenance than crisis management. As part of my ongoing healing, I volunteered with a support group for young adults, aging out of abusive homes. My story offered them hope that survival was possible, that they could build lives worth living. I taught them practical skills. No one had taught me how to establish credit, find safe housing, create boundaries, recognize red flags in relationships. These sessions often left me emotionally drained, but fulfilled, transforming my trauma into something useful. What no one in my new life fully understood was the constant vigilance I maintained. I never listed my business address online. I used a P.O. box for all mail. I regularly checked public records to ensure my information remained private. I had security cameras installed at both my apartment and office. These precautions seemed excessive to some friends, but for me they were as natural as locking the door at night. 3 weeks before everything changed, subtle shifts in my environment triggered old alarms. Hang-up calls to my office phone, a sense of being watched while walking to my car. Small things moved in my apartment that Sam swore he had not touched. Most people would dismiss these as paranoia or coincidence, but survivors develop instincts ordinary people lack. Something was wrong. The Tuesday it happened started like any other. Arizona spring sunshine streamed through my kitchen windows as I made coffee. The desert flowers on my balcony had bloomed overnight, adding splashes of yellow and purple to the morning view. I had 3 client meetings, scheduled lunch plans with a potential new client, and dinner with Sam. Nothing suggested that by sunset my carefully constructed life would shatter. I dressed in a navy blue pantsuit that projected the professional confidence I had worked years to build. My phone buzzed with a good morning text from Sam and a reminder about our dinner reservation. I responded with a heart emoji, something that had taken me years to feel comfortable sending. As I applied minimal makeup and styled my hair, I noticed how relaxed my reflection appeared, how different from the hunched, fearful girl I once was. The irony of feeling so secure on this particular day would not escape me later. Before leaving, I watered my plants, straightened the already perfect throw pillows, and locked my door with the casual confidence of someone who believes they control their environment. I remember thinking how beautiful the day looked, how fortunate I felt. That false sense of security was perhaps the cruelest part of what was to come. The workday passed quickly. My meetings went well, I secured the new client over lunch, and I was looking forward to sharing the good news with Sam at dinner. I arrived home around 4:30 in the afternoon, wanting time to freshen up before our 7 o'clock reservation. The moment the elevator doors opened on my floor, something felt wrong. The hallway was empty, but I could sense a disturbance in the air, like static electricity before a storm. As I approached my apartment, I noticed slight scuff marks on the polished floor, as if someone had been pacing. My hand hesitated over my keys. Should I call Security Sam? But what would I say? That the hallway felt strange, that I had a bad feeling I had worked so hard to overcome irrational fears, that I second-guessed my instincts, a mistake I will always regret. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, immediately hit by the wrongness. My apartment smelled different, the air disturbed. Before I could retreat, the door closed behind me with a decisive click. They were sitting in my living room on the cream-colored couch I had splurged on last year, looking grotesquely out of place among my carefully chosen belongings. 16 years had aged them. My father's once dark hair was now steel gray, his face mapped with lines of dissipation, his once imposing frame somehow both softer and more menacing. My mother's carefully maintained appearance had hardened her blonde hair now, an unnatural platinum, her thin lips painted bright red like a warning sign. They were wearing clothes that suggested middle-class respectability, a costume as false as the concerned expressions they attempted to arrange on their faces when they saw me. "Phoebe," my mother said, her voice triggering an instant regression in my psyche. "Is that any way to greet your parents after all this time?" I stood frozen in my entryway, keys still in hand as 16 years of therapy and growth temporarily evaporated. My throat closed, my vision tunneled. I was 18 again, trapped and terrified. "How did you find me?" The question emerged as a whisper. My father's laugh scraped across my nerves. "You think you are so clever changing your name, hiding away. But blood always finds blood." Later I would learn they had hired a private investigator who specialized in finding estranged family members. My volunteer work with abuse survivors had led to a newspaper feature with my business name. From there, it was just a matter of time and money. "What do you want?" My voice found some strength. I remained by the door, calculating whether I could reach the hallway before they could reach me. "Is that any way to welcome your family?" My mother's tone held the familiar note of manipulation. "We have been so worried about you all these years. Not a word, not a phone call. Do you know what that does to parents?" "I know what parents did to me," I replied, standing straighter. "Why are you here?" They exchanged a look I recognized from childhood, the silent communication that always preceded their worst behaviors. My father cleared his throat, adopting the reasonable tone he used when speaking to bank customers. "We have had some financial setbacks, medical bills. The house needs repairs. Your mother had to retire early from teaching. Times are hard. That has nothing to do with me." My mother's face hardened. "Everything you have is because of us. We raised you, educated you, made you who you are. Children owe their parents." The absurdity nearly made me laugh. "Oh, for the bruises, for the gaslighting, for teaching me that love means pain. No, I owe you nothing." My father stood up then, his familiar bulk triggering an automatic flinch I hated myself for. "This is a nice place you have. Must have cost a pretty penny. Your own business, too. Doing well for yourself while your family struggles." The threat was implicit in his tone. My mother joined him, her eyes calculating as she surveyed my home. "We are not asking for much. Just this apartment, and maybe a monthly allowance. Call it alimony if you want. We gave you life, after all." The audacity was breathtaking. "You need to leave. Now." I pulled my phone from my pocket. "I am calling security." My father moved with surprising speed for his age, crossing the room and knocking the phone from my hand. "Always ungrateful. Always thinking you are better than us. We know things about you, Phoebe. Things your fancy clients might find interesting. There is nothing you could say that would matter to me or anyone in my life now." My mother's smile turned cruel. "What about your involvement in that fire at your first apartment building? The one where that old man died?" My blood froze. There had been a fire in my first apartment building years ago, but I had been at work when it happened. An elderly resident had tragically died of smoke inhalation. I had nothing to do with it, but my parents had clearly constructed a narrative designed to threaten me. That is a lie. Is it? My father's voice dropped to the dangerous register I remembered from childhood. The authorities might be interested in taking another look. Records can be found. Witnesses can remember things differently when properly motivated. Understanding dawned with horrifying clarity. This was not just about money. This was about control. About punishing me for escaping. About destroying everything I had built. Get out of my home. My voice was steadier than I felt. This could be our home, my mother countered. We could be a family again. All you need to do is sign a few papers. Our lawyer has them prepared. I would rather live on the street again than give you anything. My father's face contorted with rage, the mask of reasonableness slipping. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we did for you, he advanced toward me, fists clenched. 16 years melted away as terror flooded my system. But something else rose alongside the fear rage. Pure, clarifying rage at these people who had tormented me, abandoned me, and now threatened to take everything I had worked for. Do not touch me, I warned, backing toward the kitchen. I am not a helpless child anymore. He lunged. I dodged. The kitchen counter was behind me. My hand found the knife block as he came at me again. I pulled out a knife not to attack, but to defend. Stay back, I warned. My mother was screaming, now calling me insane, dangerous, unstable. My father's eyes fixed on the knife, a smile spreading across his face. Threatening your own father, that will play well in court. He feinted left, then rushed right, trying to grab my wrist. We struggled, the knife between us. His superior weight pushing me back against the counter. His alcohol-soured breath in my face. My mother shouting encouragement to him. What happened next occurred in slow motion, yet too fast to stop. He twisted my wrist. I resisted. The knife turned. His momentum carried him forward. The blade disappeared into his abdomen. His expression of rage transformed into shock. Blood bloomed across his button-down shirt, staining my kitchen tiles as he collapsed. My mother's screams shifted from anger to horror. She was on her phone immediately, not to help him, but to condemn me. My daughter stabbed my husband. She shrieked into the phone. She is trying to kill us both. Please help us. I stood frozen, the bloody knife fallen from my numb fingers, watching my father gasp on my kitchen floor. I should have called for an ambulance, should have applied pressure to the wound, should have done something, but shock paralyzed me as 16 years of nightmares materialized in bloody reality on my clean white tiles. Police sirens wailed in the distance. My mother continued her performance now, kneeling beside my father, playing the devastated wife while shooting venomous glances at me. How could you do this? She sobbed loudly. Your own father. When the police burst through my door minutes later, the scene they found told a clear story. A hysterical mother, a bleeding father, a daughter standing catatonic, with a bloody knife at her feet. I was handcuffed, Mirandized, and led away while paramedics worked on my father. He was pronounced dead before reaching the hospital. I spent that night in a jail cell charged with second-degree murder, unable to process how my carefully constructed life had imploded in less than an hour. I might still be in prison, if not for two things: Sam and my building's security system. Sam was supposed to meet me for dinner that night. When I did not show up or answer his calls, he came to my apartment. Finding police tape and neighbors buzzing with gossip, he immediately sought out the detective in charge. Sam explained our relationship, my history, and most importantly, reminded them to check the security footage from the hallway and my apartment. I had installed those cameras after a break-in at a neighboring apartment 2 years earlier. The hallway footage clearly showed my parents picking my lock and entering my apartment nearly 2 hours before I arrived home. The cameras inside captured their entire conversation, every threat, my father's attack, and the accidental nature of his death. The district attorney dropped the murder charge within 48 hours, but my mother's campaign against me was just beginning. From her hotel room, she contacted every media outlet that would listen, painting me as a mentally unstable daughter who had lured her loving parents to her home and attacked them in cold blood. She claimed I had fabricated abuse allegations to justify my violence. She wept on local news about losing her husband and daughter in one tragic day. Fortunately, my lawyer immediately filed for a restraining order and countersued for defamation. The security footage was devastating to her claims, but she persisted. More disturbing were the discoveries made during the investigation. My parents had a history of financial fraud spanning decades. They had targeted not just me, but other estranged family members, former friends, and vulnerable elderly people from my father's bank. They had been living under multiple aliases, moving whenever their schemes were discovered. Most shocking was finding 3 other missing adult children from my father's previous relationships, all of whom had similar stories of abuse and escape. My parents had tracked down 2 of them years earlier, extracting money through similar threats and intimidation tactics. I was apparently next on their list. The prosecutor now shifted focus from me to my mother. Charges of fraud, extortion, breaking and entering, and false accusations piled up as their history unraveled. Former victims came forward. Bank records revealed offshore accounts. The narrative transformed from domestic tragedy to calculated criminal enterprise. Through all this, I remained largely silent, speaking only through my attorney and to investigators. Sam moved into my apartment, temporarily concerned for my safety amid media attention. Friends formed a protective circle around me. Dr. Linden conducted daily sessions to help me process the trauma. But nightmares returned with vengeful intensity. I scrubbed my kitchen floor until my hands bled, unable to remove the invisible stain of death. I jumped at every sound, checking locks compulsively. The trial was scheduled for 3 months after the incident. My mother maintained her innocence, portraying herself as a grieving widow targeted by a vindictive daughter. Her performance might have been convincing, if not for the mountain of evidence and testimony from other victims. The security footage was played in court, exposing her lies in her own words. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. My mother was sentenced to 20 years in prison without possibility of early parole. As she was led away, she looked directly at me and mouthed, "This is not over." Perhaps she meant it as a threat, but her words felt like a promise to me, a confirmation that this chapter of my life was finally closing. My father was dead. My mother would spend decades behind bars. The family that had haunted me for 16 years could no longer reach me. Yet victory brought little joy. A man had died in my home, regardless of his crimes against me. My most private traumas had been splashed across newspapers and discussed by strangers online. My business suffered as some clients discreetly took their projects elsewhere, uncomfortable with the publicity. My sanctuary apartment no longer felt safe, tainted by violence and invasion. Most difficult was reconciling my conflicting emotions: relief that my parents could never hurt me again, guilt over my father's death, despite its accidental nature, grief for the normal family I never had, and shame over the publicity surrounding my past. These feelings did not fit neatly into therapy sessions or conversations with friends. They existed in the sleepless hours between midnight and dawn, when questions without answers circled like hungry wolves. Sam remained steady throughout, never pushing me to process faster than I could understanding when I needed silence or space. My friends checked in daily with food distractions or simply quiet company. Miguel brought other survivors to speak with me, people who had faced their abusers and lived to rebuild again. Their stories reminded me that healing is not linear, that setbacks do not erase progress. 3 months after the trial, I made 2 decisions: I would sell my apartment, and I would speak publicly about my experience. The first was necessary for my mental health. I could never again feel safe in those rooms. The second was a choice to reclaim my narrative, to use my story to help others trapped in similar situations. A year has passed since that day. I live in a different apartment now, in a different neighborhood with different furniture. Sam and I are engaged, planning a small ceremony next spring. My business is slowly recovering as the media interest fades. I still attend therapy, still have occasional nightmares, still flinch at unexpected sounds. But these reactions no longer define me. What defines me is what I choose to build from the ashes: a life of honesty, purpose, and cautious joy. I speak at colleges about recognizing abuse and escaping dangerous family dynamics. I consult with domestic violence shelters on security measures. I mentor young survivors navigating independence for the first time. The most important lesson I learned through all of this is that we do not owe our abusers anything. Not forgiveness, not understanding, not second chances. Setting boundaries is not selfish, it is survival. And sometimes survival means walking away permanently, creating a family of choice rather than remaining tethered to toxic blood relations. I do not know if I will ever fully heal from the wounds my parents inflicted, both in my childhood and in their final attack. Some scars are permanent, visible only to those who know where to look. But I know now that scars can be markers of survival rather than just reminders of pain. They map the boundaries I will never again allow anyone to cross. What questions do you have about setting boundaries with toxic family members? Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to cut contact with someone who hurt you? Share your experiences in the comments below, and please like and Anyo. Subscribe if this story resonated with you. Your support helps me continue sharing these difficult but important conversations. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we are born into. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength on your own healing journey.